I lay on the cold kitchen floor, my hand clutched to my side where waves of sharp pain were radiating through my body. It felt like a knife twisting inside me. My 7-year-old daughter, Lily, stood nearby, her small face etched with fear. "Mommy, are you okay?" Lily's voice quivered, barely above a whisper. "I'll be fine, honey, just a bad stomach ache," I lied, attempting to mask the severity of my pain. Footsteps echoed through the hallway as my husband, David, appeared in the doorway, his expression one of annoyance rather than concern. He was all set for his trip, suitcase in hand. "What's going on, Evelyn? Why are you on the floor?" David asked, his voice tinged with irritation. "I think it's appendicitis, David. It's really bad. We need to go to the hospital." I managed to gasp out each word, punctuated by pain. He scoffed at me. "Appendicitis? You're probably overreacting. It's likely just indigestion." "But Dave, I really think—" My words were cut off by a sharp jolt of pain, causing me to wince. "I can't miss this trip with Rachel. Just call a taxi or something," he said, unmoved. "I can't even move. Lily's here. I need you," I pleaded, my voice laced with desperation. He shook his head, leaving his suitcase trailing behind him. I was left alone in pain with Lily. Lily's small hands found mine, her tears mirroring my own. "Mommy, don't be sick. You have to be okay." I gathered what little strength I had, pulling Lily close. "I'm here, darling. Mommy's here." With David out of the picture, I knew I had to take action. Shaking hands fumbled for my phone, and I dialed the only person I knew I could count on, my brother Michael. "Hello." Michael's voice was a beacon of hope. "Michael, it's Evelyn. I need help. I think it's appendicitis. I can't move, and Lily is frightened," I said, each word a struggle. There was a brief, stunned silence, then Michael's voice, steady and strong. "I'm coming right now. Hold on, Evelyn. I'll be there as soon as I can." Leaning back against the cold tile, I closed my eyes, trying to keep the pain at bay. Lily cuddled up to me, her presence a small comfort in that moment. A resolve formed within me. David's abandonment in my time of need would not be forgotten. It was a deep cut, a betrayal that marked the beginning of a change. As I lay in the hospital bed, the sterile white walls and the soft beeps of the machines around me felt strangely comforting. The surgery for my appendicitis had been a success, but the emotional wound left by David's abandonment was still raw. I had managed to call my parents to take care of Lily while I recovered, their voices filled with concern and unspoken questions about David's absence. 3 days later, I was back home. The physical pain was a dull reminder of the recent ordeal. Lily, her face brightening at my return, ran into my arms. "Mommy, you're back. Are you all better now?" Her innocent question tugged at my heart. "I'm getting there, sweetie," I replied, hugging her tightly, grateful for her presence. The calmness of our reunion was shattered the next day by the sound of the front door banging open. David and his sister, Rachel, stormed in, their voices raised in frustration. "Why didn't you pick us up yesterday? We had to spend extra on taxi and train fares." David's voice was loud and accusing as he entered the living room. I felt a surge of anger at his audacity. "Welcome back. You must have had a tough time," I said coldly, meeting his gaze with a glare. David stopped in his tracks, surprised by my icy reception. Rachel, too, seemed taken aback by the tension in the room. "What's with the attitude, Evelyn?" David demanded. I couldn't hold back any longer. "While you were off enjoying your trip, I was in the hospital," I said, my voice steady but seething with anger. "And you, Rachel, always demanding David's time without a thought for his family." Rachel's face reddened, and David looked bewildered. "What are you talking about? You were okay, right?" he retorted, his tone dismissive. "It's not just about being okay, David. It's about being there when your family needs you. I shot back, my frustration boiling over. Before David could respond, the living room door opened, and in walked Michael, our parents, and David's parents. 14 eyes, filled with varying degrees of anger and disappointment, were fixed on David and Rachel. "Why is everyone here?" David's voice faltered, his confidence waning under their collective glare. I took a deep breath, channeling my pain and betrayal into words. "David, you left me and Lily alone when we needed you the most. I've told everything to both our families." David seemed to shrink under the weight of my words, his usual bravado nowhere in sight. His eyes darted around, seeking an ally but found none. "It's not just about this one incident, David. It's about all the times you've put Rachel's needs above your own family," my brother Michael added, his tone laced with disappointment. Rachel, usually so confident, looked uncomfortable, her gaze shifting from the floor to the angry faces around her. David tried to defend himself, his words a mix of excuses and feeble attempts at justification. The confrontation was intense, the air thick with tension. But for me, it was a turning point. I realized that I couldn't continue living in the shadow of David's neglect. It was time for change, time for me to stand up for myself and Lily. The meeting ended with no resolution, but the message was clear. I had the support of both our families, and David's careless facade had been shattered. As they left, David's parents gave me a look of sympathy, a silent acknowledgement of their son's failings. That night, as I lay in bed, the events of the day replayed in my mind. I felt a mix of emotions, anger, disappointment, but also a newfound strength. David had shown his true colors, and it was time for me to take control of my life. The days following the confrontation were heavy with unspoken words and tension. David tried to act as if nothing had changed, but the air between us was thick with the unsaid. I spent those days reflecting, realizing the depth of my unhappiness and the need for change. The decision I came to wasn't easy, but it felt necessary, like a breath of fresh air in a long-stifled room. One evening, as David sat on the couch, nonchalantly flipping through the TV channels, I walked up to him, a folder in my hand. "David, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady. He glanced up, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. "What now, Evelyn?" I took a deep breath and handed him the folder. "I want a divorce," I said. David stared at me, his expression a mix of disbelief and mockery. "Divorce? Don't be ridiculous, Evelyn. You're overreacting." I shook my head, feeling a sense of empowerment growing within me. "It's not an overreaction. I've thought about this a lot. You've constantly put Rachel before me and Lily. I can't live like this anymore." David's face twisted into a sneer. "You think you can manage on your own? Don't be naive, Evelyn." His words were meant to wound, but I stood my ground. "I'm not naive, David. I'm aware of what this means. But I'd rather face that uncertainty than continue feeling invisible in my own marriage." He laughed, a cold, harsh sound. "Good luck, Evelyn. You'll come crawling back once you realize how hard it is out there." I felt my anger rising but kept my composure. "I won't. This is my decision, and I'm sticking to it." For a moment, David looked like he might argue further, but then he shrugged, an arrogant smirk on his face. "Fine, have it your way. But remember, I warned you," he said as he turned back to the TV, dismissing me once again. I felt a mix of emotions. There was fear, yes, but also a liberating sense of freedom. I was finally taking control of my life, stepping out of the shadows. The next day, I initiated the legal proceedings for the divorce. It was a daunting process filled with paperwork and legalities, but I was determined. My parents and Michael were supportive, offering help and encouragement during this time. David's true character became even more apparent. He was dismissive and uncooperative, trying to intimidate me into backing down. But I stood firm, bolstered by the support of my family, and the growing realization of my own strength. As the days passed, David's facade began to crumble. The charming, confident man I had married was revealed to be selfish and manipulative, his true colors exposed for all to see. The divorce proceedings were tough, but I faced them head-on. Each step forward was a testament to my newfound resolve. I was no longer the woman who lay on the kitchen floor, ignored and in pain. I was a woman reclaiming her life, her dignity, and her happiness. The divorce was a grueling process marked by David's attempts to undermine and belittle me at every turn. He would often sneer during our meetings, making snide remarks about my capabilities as a mother and my future without him. But his words, once so debilitating, now only fueled my determination to break free from his toxic grasp. "Enjoy your life of struggle, Evelyn," David taunted during one of our final meetings. "You'll soon realize how good you had it with me." His arrogance was infuriating, but I kept my composure. I'd rather struggle every day than spend another moment with someone who has so little regard for his family, I retorted, my voice unwavering. David's smug expression faltered for a moment, replaced by a flash of anger. He quickly masked it with a scoff, but I could tell my words had hit their mark. The day the divorce was finalized, I felt a strange mix of relief and apprehension. I was free from David, but the journey ahead was daunting. Yet, as I walked out of the courthouse, a sense of liberation washed over me. I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. In the weeks that followed, David's life began to unravel. His neglectful behavior and the divorce became the talk of his workplace. Colleagues who once admired him now looked at him with a mix of pity and disdain. His charming facade had crumbled, revealing the pettiness and selfishness beneath. Word of our divorce and the reasons behind it spread through our community, thanks largely to my cousin, a well-known figure in our neighborhood. David, who had always prided himself on his image and reputation, found himself the subject of whispered conversations and judgmental glances. Rachel, too, faced her share of backlash. Her interference in our marriage was now public knowledge, and friends and neighbors began to view her with suspicion and disapproval. The bond she once shared with David, unbreakable in her eyes, was now strained and awkward. One evening, while picking up Lily from school, I overheard a heated argument between David and Rachel outside their house. Their voices were laced with blame and resentment. "It's your fault we're in this mess, Rachel," David yelled, his frustration evident. "How dare you blame me? You're the one who couldn't keep your family together," Rachel shot back, her voice high with anger. Their argument was a stark contrast to the united front they once presented. The seeds of discord sown by their actions had finally borne fruit, and they were now reaping the consequences. As I walked away with Lily, I felt a sense of vindication. David and Rachel were finally facing the repercussions of their selfishness. It was a harsh lesson, but one they had brought upon themselves. That night, as Lily slept peacefully in her room, I sat by the window reflecting on the past few months. The journey had been difficult, but it had led me to a place of strength and self-respect. I had fought for my dignity and for Lily's future, and though the road ahead was uncertain, I knew I was ready to face it. I felt ready to face it with newfound confidence. In the aftermath of the divorce, life settled into a new rhythm, one that was quieter but more fulfilling. The shackles of my unhappy marriage were gone, and in their place was a newfound sense of independence. I started to rebuild my life piece by piece with Lily by my side. My first step was to secure a job. The gap in my resume due to years dedicated to motherhood was a concern, but I was determined. After several interviews, I landed a position at a small accounting firm. The firm was run by a woman who believed in supporting working mothers, and the environment was understanding and flexible. It was a perfect fit for me. Lily adapted to the changes with the resilience that only children possess. She started kindergarten, her days filled with new friends and learning. Her laughter and chatter filled our home with joy, a stark contrast to the tense silence that had pervaded it before. But the echo of my past with David was not completely silenced. One afternoon, while dropping Lily off at school, I overheard a group of parents whispering, "That's her, Evelyn." Heard her husband left her because he couldn't stand being around her anymore. Their words stung, but I held my head high. The gossip and judgment were small prices to pay for the freedom and peace I now had. Meanwhile, David's downfall continued. His pride had taken a significant hit, and his once spotless reputation was now tarnished. I heard from mutual acquaintances that he had moved back in with his parents, a fact that he tried to keep hidden, but eventually seeped out. Rachel's situation was no better. Her meddling in our marriage had alienated her from many of her friends. The once inseparable siblings were now barely on speaking terms, their relationship strained by blame and regret. As for me, I found solace in the support of my family. My brother Michael moved closer to us, and his presence was a constant source of comfort. My parents doted on Lily, their love for her a balm to the wounds of the past. One day, while sipping coffee in my kitchen, I reflected on the journey I had taken, the pain, the struggle, the liberation. It had all led me to this moment of tranquility. I had not only survived, I had emerged stronger, more self-assured. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. I opened the door to find David standing there, a look of defeat on his face. "Evelyn, I'm sorry. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone." His apology, though late, was a validation of my decision. "Thank you, David," I said, not unkindly, but it's too late. I've moved on. As I closed the door on David and the life we once shared, I felt a sense of closure. The chapter of my life that he had been a part of was over, and a new chapter was beginning. A chapter where I was the author of my own story, free to write my future as I saw fit. Lily's voice called out from the living room, bringing a smile to my face. I walked towards her, ready to embrace the life that lay ahead, a life full of possibilities and hope.